Richard Osborne, black belt in Taekwondo. Been in martial arts. I think my dad made me go to my first class in 1985. So I really didn't have a choice. His first, back in the 80s and late 70s, they didn't want to teach kids. And the very first children's class my dad started in the early 80s was my class that I was in. That was his first children's class. There was 5 of us, 5 kids. Got started in Taekwondo. My dad was an ATA black belt, broke away from the ATA. They didn't want him fighting full contact. So he said, hey, look, I want to go fight open tournaments. I want to fight full contact. ATA wasn't wanting to do that right at that point. And he broke away, went independent. And then from there, it just kind of blossomed from there. I don't know life without martial arts. I mean, I was 6 or 7 years old there when I started, and I've done it my whole life. And then as soon as I could get a belt around my waist and we could find a gym, we went to tournaments. And then my road career started. I mean, we were on the highway starting in 85, and I took a couple years off for football, but martial arts, Taekwondo, open tournaments, the sport and the martial arts itself has been around me, watching movies, Jean-Claude, when he would come up, Steven Seagal, we were the first in lines to watch these movies. I mean, martial arts has been a part of my life as long as I can remember. So I'm a lifer in this, and I hope to continue to be a lifer in it.
Yeah, and see, that's a goal I don't think everybody talks about too, is that a lot of us that have done this for so long, it's that continued part too. I tell my students when I see some of these guys out there 60, 70, 80, it's like, I want to be there. I want to go there. But let's talk about, you started in 85, kids classes, like that really wasn't around then. That was a very new thing then.
Right. And I think Karate Kid came out in 84 when Karate Kid came out. I think that was the first movie, was the early 80s, or it might have been 85, but that boom hadn't started yet. And then shortly after that, you really started to see more and more kids coming through. But yeah, a lot of the martial arts classes just didn't have kids. It was mainly adults. I mean, it was primarily adults in the 70s and 80s, not saying that there wasn't kids in martial arts. There was. It just, the kids classes and the youth movement really didn't start till the Karate Kid movement. When the movie came out, you started seeing a transition to more kids, and then it just kind of exploded from there. And it's, the industry now, which you see it from a school owner, I mean, it's almost shifted the other direction. It's less adults now, and more kids now than it was. But it was completely opposite when it first came to the States, and then it kind of developed from there. And then I came in right at I don't call it the baby boomer time, but I came in at the time when the kids program started to develop and grow, and then they've taken off from there.
For sure. And that's something I tell my students too, that I had never thought of. And one time I was just kind of reflecting, looking back, and was like, yeah, we had kids classes, but there was a lot of teens and adults in the school when I started. I started in 1990, and I never really thought about it. But I also explained to my students, like, every kid that comes into school, they're in Taekwondo class with like one of their classmates or one of their teacher's kids or something. When I go back on it, in my grade level, there was one other kid I knew did karate somewhere. I did Taekwondo. And throughout the years, like, I was the weird kid that did martial arts. It was like, oh, don't you play baseball? No, I go to Taekwondo. What's that? Right. It's such mainstream now. I think it's Allstate or one of them. There's a commercial, and the kid's throwing the ball, getting ready, and then the little girl runs around. She's in a gi and a belt. And my heart melted. I was like, oh, we've made it. Like, that was a big one. I don't think people realize it, but that was a really big one, that it's such a, it was in a commercial with baseball, football, soccer, the kids getting ready for all their different stuff. And there was a martial art uniform. That is relatively a newer thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is awesome to see how much our sport and our art and what we do has become more mainstream. It is more mainstream than it ever has. I mean, it really, truly is. It's still a dark horse of a sport. Like, people still really don't know it, but you see it in commercials and movies and everywhere that you look, there's something that has to do with martial arts, even sitcoms. Like, I've watched sitcoms of like Friends, and they're doing karate moves and stuff like that. So it has been around for years. It's just more integrated into the mainstream now, and we see it more prevalent. Anywhere we turn, there's martial arts somewhere.
Yes, and I think a lot of it too is there's a lot of martial artists that have come up on that open circuit, or different circuits in general, that are breaking into Hollywood, that are doing bigger things, that are getting out there, that we're seeing it more and more. And I know for like myself and yourself, it's probably obvious, like our feeds on social media, anything's martial arts, martial arts, martial arts. Like everything in my life is martial arts. So, but when you start seeing it other places and you realize, oh, hey, other people are seeing that now. It's really making that transition.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely it is.
And it's huge. It's going to be huge for the sport, and huge because there's so many people out there putting that work in. And what do you think? Growing up, and this is a question. I always look at this. So my father wasn't in martial arts. He got in after I got my black belt. My dad smarted off and said, "Yeah, you get your black belt," because I didn't like sports. I'd quit sports. He goes, "You get your black belt, I'll start." Got my black belt and was like, "Hey, let's go." And he did it, but it was just kind of like a just do it with me thing. He wasn't really into it. But now my position with my son is going to be reversed. Ben has been last week was 8 years. He's officially been in a uniform. He's going to have a different outlook on it of, well, dad put me in martial arts. It's just what he knows. Like, hey, we're going to a tournament, and they take off. They know the tournament. They know everybody. It's a different lifestyle there for him. But what was that like for you coming up and just being involved in it everywhere and training, from a father to son perspective?
Well, I think every child's experience is different. Mine was, he had to fuss and fight to get me to class. I mean, he was, back when he was training, he was a full contact fighter. So they trained all the time. I'm talking about road work. They're running in the winter. Now I'm not saying that he had me do that kind of stuff, but when we were going to class, he was going to class and training probably 6 to 7 days a week. And we would have classes at least 5 nights a week. So, I'm brand new to martial arts. He's never had kids classes, and I'm training 4 or 5 nights a week. I mean, we started doing those kids classes, but there was always something going on. So it was a transition for me. I was young. I didn't want to go to class all the time. I struggled at first, and even with tournaments, I wasn't a great competitor. And dad was a very well-known competitor in this region, and being a fighter. And if dad was in a tournament and he was winning the tournament that day, I knew that because back when we were coming up in tournaments, the ages were bigger. The Pee Wee division was like, you might be fighting a 8-year-old fighting 11-year-old, and it could be a white belt fighting an advanced belt. There just wasn't that many divisions. So I always knew I was going to get somebody's best that day, because if dad was going to be at the tournament and they couldn't beat dad that day, they made sure the top students always fought me first. So I always had I didn't like tournaments when I came up. I didn't like going to class. And it took a while for me to transition to where, like, okay, I want to go to class tonight. Okay, when's fight night? It took me until I was about 12 or 13 for me to really start grasping, okay, I've got a talent for this. Hey, I like this. I want to go to a tournament. Let's go to here. Let's go to class. When's fight night? Can we do fight night twice this week? So it took a transition. It was tough. It wasn't easy. It wasn't like I came in, I was like, oh my gosh, I want to go to class every night and I want to do this. It was, dad had to struggle with me to get me to class. And it took a while for me to start to really grasp and get what we were doing. And then once it did, it took off. And then I started teaching for dad around 13. I was one of dad's primary instructors. I would take the beginners back. About 13 years old, I was his primary instructor to help the new ones come through. And I started teaching at 13. So then I started developing. At the time, I didn't realize what I was doing. I was developing all these leadership skills, these life skills. And it wound up transitioning into real life situations. But it was a struggle at first. But then I got to it, and now I got hooked. I got hooked to it. And, I love going to class. I love working out. I love the benefits of martial arts. And but it was a struggle at first. And then we got to a point to where I really started to enjoy it.
See, I think a lot of parents need to hear that, because the first time a child, oh, I don't want to go, mom and dad are like, I just don't know. They just don't want to come. It's like, well, no, like, and I tell them all the time, like, that's how it is with Ben and Jocelyn. They'll literally bug me, hey, when are we going to class? I'll be like, all right, guys, get ready. We got to go to class. Oh, we got to go to class again. I'm like, do you want to go to the tournament next weekend? That's honestly, like, the travel and the tournaments is how I get them to go to class, because I'm like, well, I guess you're not going to OMN, or I guess we're not going to battle. And they'll be like, no, we'll go. But like with Jocelyn, she's really dialed in now and training hard. But Ben, it's still like last night he was throwing some stuff. I'm like, that's not how you throw a sidekick. Like, I have to keep my cool with it because he could throw a really good sidekick at 3.5 years old, 4 years old. Now we're, getting up closer to those teen years, and it's like, bro, you're purposely not throwing that kick right. Your body just works that way at this point. I know, because I've done Taekwondo a long time, I've taught a long time. Like, there's natural things he does when he quits trying to be a turd. So it's good to hear it about 13, because I'm like, last night I was watching him in class, I'm like, when is it gonna click that he's good at this? It's a great opportunity for him. I'm not giving up. He's not gonna, until he moves out of the house, he's going to class. I don't care how people feel about it, the teachings, the lessons. I don't beat it into him 7 days a week, but we go all the time, and it's just what we do. They said one time about wanting to take a break. I'm like, cool, but I'm going to all the tournaments and traveling and going to Vegas, all different places by myself. They're like, whoa, hold up, Dad, hold up. I was like, oh, now you won't come to class. So that's good to hear, because I think it is so important. And that's really cool that at that time period, your dad got you into it, because I don't think people really get it, but there wasn't youth martial arts. Like, it was when I opened my school in 2009 and was teaching 4-year-olds, that wasn't really heard of in my area. I believe you had to be 6 or 8 years old at most schools around me then, because I kind of made the mistake and said, oh, I'll train them at 4. And I had like 25 of them in class going, why did I say that? I remember when some of my students started getting older, my instructor tapping me on the shoulder at a testing one day. He's like, life getting better at the school? I was like, yeah, they're 10 and 11 now, not 4. He's like, you had a lot of them. I'm like, yeah, that was fun, but rough. So it's great to hear that. And like I said, so many parents need to hear that. The kids are going to push back at times, but they will. As an adult, you're going to look back and say, man, I'm glad I went.
Absolutely. And like I said, it's paid off in my professional careers. When I started getting into the working environment, right, I was always nominated for leadership positions every single time. So everything in my career, there's like, man, you're a leader. And they asked me, said, well, what kind of experience you've had? You're like 18 years old, but you seem like you've been working for years. I said, well, I've been teaching for years. So I had to teach adults at 13 how to do martial arts. I mean, so those skills were already developed in there. And we see it all the time with junior instructors when they teach, and they don't, again, the realization won't hit till later. Like, those kids are out there doing, and they're developing those skills, but it will pay off. It always pays off. And they'll get selected for leadership, whether it's in military, whether it's in the careers and stuff like that. So, it really, I saw the benefits, later a little bit later in life as well too. And once I started liking it, like I said, around the teenage, but that's when I really started getting to the meat of things, the teaching and the skills like that. And I'm telling you, it really did pay off in my careers. And it's still today. I'm 47 now. And, I tell people, I started in martial arts, I started teaching. And ever since I've gotten into the career side of things, since 18, 19 years old, I've always been in leadership positions, whether it was in retail, finance, now I'm in healthcare. I'm always nominated for some kind of training or leadership position, no matter what position I've been in. So it truly has had life lasting benefits to me in my personal life.
I see that a lot now in my instructors as they come up, and it was something that I dealt with too. Like, every job I've ever had, they were like, man, you're a natural leader. I'm like, I don't want to be. They'd be like, you want to move up? My reference was my instructor, Vicky, and they'd call her and they'd be like, what type of leadership values does Matt have or something? She'd be like, well, he takes 35-year-olds, lines them up, teaches them how to kick and punch for an hour for free. And they'd be like, do you think he'd be interested in management? She's like, he's 17. And they'd be like, I don't care. Like, it was the same thing. And I explained that to my instructors. Like, they have amazing parents. They've done all these great things with them. And I tell them that all the time. You guys should be so thankful for your parents. They've taken you all over the world to do these tournaments. But the leadership stuff they've developed from being in tournaments and being under those pressure situations and being in class teaching and leading and helping adults at 13, 14 years old, they just naturally aspire to it. It's so cool to watch them as they go up at school and they come in and tell me, hey, I just did this. Hey, I just did that. Kendall with DECA and Madeline's doing a lot with FFA. It's wild. And when you break down some of the things they've done at 17, 18 years old, it's more than some people have in their entire adult career. And it ties back to martial arts, and people And I think as martial artists, we fall into this too. Sometimes we get really hung up on the kicking and the punching, and we forget about what, at the end of the day, no one's, I can't say no one because there's some people probably have, but no one's been promoted because they got a great front snap kick or a great D side, or they won at this one tournament. They're achieving bigger things in life because of the leadership stuff they learn and the pressure.
Oh, I totally agree. I mean, that's what I guess that's why it really is truly inclusive sport. You and I say sport. I know martial arts people are like, well, that's
Yeah, you
not,
make some people cringe when you say sport.
yeah,
It's all
like
good.
you can't call it a sport. I'm like, I get it, I get it. But our industry, like somebody can walk off the street, and we had older adults that would never, ever, ever be able to kick above their waist, never, ever, and they were never going to win at a tournament. We would still train them in tournament fighting, and we still take them to tournaments, but they lost weight. They got a little bit more flexible. Maybe they couldn't kick above their knee, but then they got to their waist. There were so many benefits for martial arts, and it was all encompassing. It was somebody trying to lose weight. It was somebody trying to get more confidence. There were so many aspects to where somebody could really benefit from. They didn't have to be the top athlete. They didn't have to be a world champ, even a state champ. There was a benefit to be had by being in martial arts, and it can never get boring because what this person's level is, it can be raised to another level, and what their benefits are is like, what do you want out of this? Like, it's like, I hate to say it's like a sales pitch, but it truly is. When we talk to our students and stuff like that, when I had my school up and going, I was like, what do you want? And I would talk to parents like that. What are you looking for your kid? What do you want to achieve at? Well, you know what? They're wanting to play football, and I need them to be a little bit more aggressive. Okay, we can help with that. You know what? They're getting picked on at school. We need to get their confidence up. You know what? We can do that. Well, Richard, I don't ever want to take them to tournaments. I don't think they're going to be a tournament fighter. I'm not worried about that. What I'm worried about is I want you to get to where this child can walk with confidence every day into school. I'm not worried about, I know we go to tournaments and we talk about it, but that's not the goal for this child. We won't do that. We're working on something else. We're trying to get that other goal. So it really is an inclusive sport. It's an art that can really help a lot of people, all ages, sizes, types. It really is all inclusive.
And I think people forget that too. If they're an adult, they think I can't do it because I'm an adult, or if the kid is shy, I can't do it because my kid's shy, or if the kid's small, or if the kid's overweight, whatever it is. People are always going to label it with something, yeah. But that's something I've always explained to my students. We do some weapons, we do some self-defense, we have our regular classes, we have it's what are your benefits? And I ask the classes that a lot myself. What are you looking for out of it? I don't know if they're getting over something. One of the things we've come across recently is children born or of early school age when COVID hit that were home for so long are really struggling with making friends. Social anxiety is huge with these kids. And so with martial arts, they're coming into a place where they have friends, and it's in a different environment than what they're getting at school. And we're seeing a big push with these kids becoming more outgoing and building confidence that, we were all thrown into a new world at that point. We didn't know what to do. And we're seeing some of these kids suffering. And martial arts is helping them. They don't need, they're not coming in to be a tournament fighter. Like you said, they're coming in just to get over the fact that sometimes the hardest part is just opening the door and coming in the school, that inviting part. But again, I explained to my parents the same way. I'm not telling you got to go to tournaments, but tournaments are a big thing for us. We love going to tournaments. People like yourself and myself that have done this for a long time. We see the benefit that pressure puts. And that I explain to my students all the time, whether you're winning in a tournament or not, when you get in there to points bar and you're under that and everybody's cheering and everybody's making noise and that energy, there's going to be things that happen in life that you're going to slide right on through with no problem because you've put yourself in that situation. There's things in life where people are like, why aren't you freaking out right now? I'll be like, well, this one time I was doing this, or, when I walked out to the cage to fight at the casino in front of all these people, it's like, what's 10 people watching me going to bother me? There's, 500 people there, whatever it was. That's such a huge part. And I think that's been a big part of our school too, is I tell the people, same thing. You don't have to do the tournaments, but it'd be a great idea. And here I got a couple for you to pick from. And that's been your passion with growing OMN, and growing your tournaments, and Heartland has been amazing. But what is it, because we know we believe in the value of the tournament. So what is it that drives you and your passion for those events and for the kids and the remember one tournament, one of the OMNs, there was a problem. Somebody came over, this was going on. You're like, we want to make sure they're having a good event. It was something like that. It's kind of what you said. And I remember being like, wow, that's a big difference. Like, I loved that because the ref was in the right. The person complaining was in the wrong. They had been complaining all day. But it was great that you were like, no, we need to make sure they have a good event. Not, yeah, just throw them out, whatever, get rid of them. There's a different passion there when I see you run these events. I'm not doing that to kiss your butt because you're on my podcast, but there truly is, and everyone watching this will say the same thing. Like, what is it that really drives you on those events?
I think it's doing the events. I say doing the events, like I've been to so many events over the years, and I truly like everybody has their place. Some people are great instructors, people are great coaches, some people are great athletes. My place was with the promotion side. I was an okay competitor. I wasn't great by any means, but I was an okay. But I love going to tournaments, and so I got to see the good, bad, and ugly of tournaments. Right? That's kind of a cliche thing to say, but it truly is. And I got to see what good promoters, how they ran their tournaments, and I saw the benefits of what tournaments could be. So when I started my tournament back in 2011, and I ran tournaments with my dad, I helped him out, and me and my brother, we did some stuff before that. But when I really broke off on my own, I said, hey, I've got a game plan. I want to do things this way. I want to make tournaments better. I want them to be truly events. I want it to be an event. I want somebody so excited they wait all year long and they pencil that event on the calendar. And when they get there, it feels like a showcase. It feels, I had to start out in the gym side. And there's nothing wrong with tournaments in gyms. I'm not saying that, but I had a vision in my head. I wanted it to be a showcase. I wanted it to be truly an event. And I really am worried about how the parents feel when they walk in and where they sit and what kind of food is there. I'm worried about how the competitor feels. The competitor that gets first place, did they like their first place trophy? The kid that did not win all day long, how did that kid have a good time? Did that competitor have a good time, even though they got last place in every single division? Did they feel like they still went out and got a T-shirt and they're hanging out by the pool? Like, all these aspects of a tournament, I wanted to mold and shape into, and nothing ever is going to be perfect, right? You can never have a perfect tournament, but I strive for that. That's why I asked for the feedback. I really wanted to give true event experience. And then for the school owners too, I don't want somebody to be a school owner and lose students because of a poorly ran tournament, which happens. I mean, that can happen. Like, somebody goes to a tournament and they're like, you know what, we don't want to do this. That was terrible. I'm not wasting my time with that. And so all these aspects I wanted to be able to encompass in a tournament. I don't, and there may be a lot of promoters that think this way. I just know I did. And this is what kind of drove me to create OMN, to build OMN. And then, the sports side of me too. I played football and basketball when I was younger. The sports side of me is I love the recruiting side. I love being able to find athletes that nobody's talking about, or maybe isn't on a big team, and bringing them into an event. And they're like, and somebody comes from a different region and they come in, they go, oh my gosh, who is that? Like, I've never seen that person before. And that just helps grow the sport. So that part of it helps kind of grow the sport, and it grows other events too. If I come and do my stuff right, they're going to want to go to more tournaments, and then it helps everybody else. But it truly is the drive of giving people the experience, and giving them a true tournament that is just unlike anything else. And I want it to be. And I'm not saying, there's other tournaments like OMN. I know there is, but I'm trying to be the best event possible that people can go to, no matter if they go to the Battle of Atlanta. I want to give them a little piece of the Battle of Atlanta. And also, too, saying that same thing, a lot of people will never get to go to Battle. They'll never get to go to Diamonds. And I wanted OMN to kind of give them a little glimpse, just a small glimpse of what the big time looks like, to give people a platform to go, okay, we've tried OMN, now let's go try the bigger stuff. Let's go, we've gotten a little piece of this and try to go that. So, a great event, customer friendly, a feeder to other events, I mean, there's just so much that I'm wanting OMN to accomplish. It's not just setting up a tournament and having people come and compete. It's more than that to me. I want families to have a good time. I want them to come down to Springfield, or when I had it in St. Louis, to have a good family experience and to enjoy each other when they travel. And then when they get to the tournament, to have a good experience. Then I want to build competitors up and help them strive to get to where they want to. So there's just so much that I put into that event. It's more than just the tournament itself. So hopefully that answered. I tried to do the Reader's Digest version and condense it a little bit. Hopefully,
No,
hopefully that
and you're
gave you the
right.
picture.
You're right. And when we started doing tournaments with you guys, you hit me up for a long time. I finally came down and we did it. After we did the circuit with you guys that first year, I told the parents, I'm like, this is where home's gonna be. And I had people like, why? They're like, why? I was like, because these guys are promoters. I was like, Richard's a promoter that is taking pride in his event. It's not a guy that owns a school just being like, yeah, let's just have a tournament, get some trophies, let everybody, and you got ring 2 and ring 3 chatting for 45 minutes instead of running their groups through. And I got parents in my ear because, like you said, a bad event it's why there's so many school owners that do not do tournaments. They've had too many bad events that cost them to lose students. And when you look at an event and go, wow, I'm going to lose money this weekend because this could run off a potential customer, why go? But again, like you said with OMN, being a feeder to the bigger ones, that's exactly what you've created. That's with us. We came several years, and then someone, heck, it might have been you. I don't know. Someone's like, been to Battle, and I was like, man, I keep hearing this. I got to go. So like, that's another one we go to every year is Battle of Atlanta. But when we sat down this year to lay out our year for our school, I've been working very closely with Rise and Aaron Hensley. He's like, you need to have that one pinnacle tournament that the whole team goes to. You guys you go all out. You come into gear, and there was no question. My staff, my instructor, everybody, they're like, oh, amen. That's our event. That's the event we're taking everybody to, because the venue, like you said, seeing everybody at the pool, the parents at my school in January, when you take off that little spot of promoting, they're always like, do you know when it is? Can you message him? I'm like, no, give him his break. He'll start teasing us here in a minute. When you're taking your little break, they're like, well, we want to get it on the calendar for next year. Like, people want that. And I know going to that as a martial arts school owner, if I'm going to push and build a comp team to 50 people and I'm going to bring them to an event, I know I have faith in it's going to be a solid event for them. They're going to have fair competition. They're going to have good medals. They're going to have a good time. They're going to get to see a great plethora of martial artists. They never know who they're going to be standing ringside with. You may have some of the biggest names in NASCA there. You just never know who's going to be around. It's a great event. Your staff, everybody's passed this way. Hey, you guys, everything, you need anything, everything good? It means a lot. And I don't think everybody always sees that. And I hope they do as things grow, because it is when tournaments are used positively and they're used in aspect of coming to a promoter like yourself to a great event, it brings so much energy when you come back to the dojo. When you come back to the school with your team and you have that recap and they're telling their friends and they're showing everybody and they're displaying it, it's such a great energy. And it's because people like yourself pouring that into it and pouring that hard work into OMN. Now you have another one too, Heartland, and that's been a favorite of ours. So I believe I came to the first year. I believe that's the one you finally got me to come to. Yeah. And that's 7 years now.
It's something. Yeah, it's getting up there in years now. Yeah,
it's awesome.
And I did that. I always didn't want to saturate our area, our region, for people who maybe not, if they see this, our region is a smaller region. Like, we have to pull, like, Missouri's a big state geographically, but not like population. We're not Florida, we're not Texas, we're not the Northeast, and so it takes a lot to pull into tournaments, but I didn't want to saturate the tournaments. Heartland came about, was trying to build up students, a smaller all kids tournament to basically help those. Like, I've had people go, you know what, Richard, OMN is too big for our school. Like, we can't compete there. We know it's too big. And I've tried to dispel that as much as I can, because I do believe it's for everybody. But I wanted to be able to give somebody some kind of feeder to get a smaller tournament, to be more inclusive of just the kids, to help build them up. And that's where Heartland was born, was to do that. We made it a 17 and under tournament, and I flirted with going back to where it's a full tournament, to where it's got adults, but I think the wheelhouse is just to have it for kids. and let the kids come, let the coaches come and coach their kids. And then we get some schools in there that don't go to tournaments normally, and it just gives them a little bit of practice. Then they go try somebody else's tournament. So I love doing the Heartland tournament. It's just got a little bit different spin on it, like it's all kids. It's a smaller event, but people seem to love it. We always draw a decent crowd there, and the kids seem to really like the skateboards. I don't. It's about them skateboards. Kids love them skateboards.
Brett Thomas and I talked, we'll fight for a skateboard. I was like, I'll let Brett beat me up a couple rounds, like you post skateboards. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
We get trophies. Yeah. It's like, you kids get to fight for a skateboard. Yeah. I've got, Brooklyn comes down from Wichita for one of them skateboards every year. She loves it.
Yeah.
And it's great. And so I try to dispel that too about OMN being too big. I try to explain to parents at my school when we're talking, because we really talk about that one a lot. And they'll be like, hey, this is, would this be a good one for their younger student? I'm like, actually, the divisions are great, but mom and dad, you need to understand there's gonna be a lot of people in the room. There's a lot of energy, there's a lot going on. So I just try to take the extra time to prep them for the environment. It's a great environment. There's nothing negative going on, but it is a big room with a lot of people. Because I find that the average person, like I always tease the parents at the school, they'll start asking about tournaments. Like this year I've got 9 new students on our team, and when they're like, hey, can you help me paint a picture of a tournament? I'm like, take everything you've ever seen in the movies and throw it away, because that's not it at all. There is no cage fighting with the kids. There is no like tilted platform. We don't have people walking wrong, sliding numbers across. Like everything from, it's like I've never been to a tournament that looked like one from a movie. So take all that, throw it out the window. And, I try to have videos on my phone to show them, but I try to explain to everybody, like if the tournament experience I want a new competitor to have is OMN. I just have to properly prep the parent for the number of people that could possibly be in that room at any given time. And the chaos that is me sprinting to rings and running here and running there and the different things. I try to prep the new ones for it. The experience, the veterans are great, but like flat out, if like one of the new students be like, hey, we got some family in Atlanta. We heard you guys talk about this battle. Immediately I'm like, no, that is not a tournament. I was like, I compete, my black belts compete. I was like, I don't want to chase around a new white belt at that tournament. I don't want, and nothing against battle. We know we love the tournament. Sure. But the idea, the first time I went, I was up in one area competing. Kendall was in another. My kids were in another with my wife. Like I was like, ooh, that's a lot. I tell them that's for our veterans. That's for when we've been competing a while. I'm not, you got to be pretty self-sufficient at getting your butt in the ring and getting things done. This isn't a new walk a brand new karate parent through the tournament. OMN is one that works. I'll take new parents to that one. I just prep them, and I think a lot of school owners should take that into thought of just prepping them for the energy and for the size of the event and for the fact that there is going to be a stage and people are up there competing too, and there's a lot going on. It's not your usual gym tournament.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what, that's why, the first timers division we added to OMN, it's like, why are you doing first timers? Because I really do like, if we can really capture a student at OMN, like I love it. Like some of my favorite memories are the kids that are breaking the boards, and I've got the little stickers on them, and then they get their first little trophy, and it was my tournament they did that with. Like that is huge to me. Like every year I try to increase that number. Like I love that they used my tournament as that platform to launch their career. And so I do believe that we are in that perfect size as far as like we are big to where we give people that kind of that big experience a little bit, but at the same time, we're not overly big where we can't take care of people on their first trial run. We can do that. We can manage that. And I've talked to my wife, and I don't know if we want OMN to get much bigger. At some point in time, I thought about being a world tournament, and that may come later on in life. But I think we've got the sweet spot right now. We've got a good crowd that comes in. We can take care of people the way they need to be taken care of. I can take care of the judges and the officials, and with minimal stress. I'm not saying as a promoter there is some stress in that, but minimal stress. And I think we're the right size to be able to help new students and to help, and at the same time give the veterans what they're looking for. So I really do. We've come to a point where I really think we're at a good sweet spot as far as the event on numbers and how we organize it and how we run it.
That's awesome. Any big things coming up for OMN this year now that we are officially in 2025?
You know, a couple of things we're looking at is kind of changing the platform as far as the traditional challenges. You know, with you being a Korean stylist, we've had different feedback on that. Should we do side by side? Should we not do two forms and just do one? So we're actually looking at making some changes to the Japanese and Korean challenge. I've had some feedback on adding tag team sparring. Like that has been a huge thing.
Really?
And so, you know, the tag team sparring maybe make an appearance. I'm working on the details of that. The thing is, I don't want to add so much to OMN that we get away from what people love about OMN is that we run efficiently. You know, I've got Mr. Kramer, I got Sierra, you know, I've got all these helpers, Kelly, my sister-in-law, my brother, you know, we've got all these people that come and help and run our event and we coordinate well and we run well. The thing is, if you keep adding too much, you oversaturate it and sometimes it can take too long. So there's some things the sword sparring. People love sword sparring. We're thinking about adding that to Saturday. So there are some divisions we're thinking about adding. I just don't want to add too much that takes away from the efficiency of the tournament. But yeah, we were looking at some changes. Also, too, on the continuous side, I'm starting to look at the Wako rules. You're a Wako fighter. I know you did some stuff with Wako. So I'm starting to look at that too. You know, they've got the IOC recognition. The one thing with our sport is they're always talking about the Olympics, right? We're Taekwondo guys, so all we hear from the traditional TKD guys is Olympics, Olympics, Olympics. You know, with Wako getting that IOC sanctioning, you know, is that a possible future? So I thought about our continuous fighting looking more like the light kick. Kind of, you know, I'm looking at their rules and their systems. I can't say I'm a Wako sanctioned event, but just to emulate what the rules are going to look like. So there are some things in the work. I rebranded this year. We got a new logo. I don't know if you saw that or not, but we got a brand new logo. So we're kind of rebranding how the look of the event is. This year's theme is neon. So I'm doing a lot of neon stuff. Like we're going to have like an old throwback, like 80s looking t-shirt going on. The night show is going to be pretty electric. I've got lots of stuff I'm trying to throw out into the crowd this year and really get it going. So, you know, the biggest changes this year is going to be probably some divisions. We're going to be changing some divisions around or maybe adding some divisions. But, you know, we're still in the Oasis. We're locked into the Oasis for the next couple of years. And there's some other things I want to do. You know, I hear feedback all the time. You know, one of the things I try to do with OMN, I could never get it pulled off, was like for you school owners, like a business owners, you know, with Mr. Hensley and the Rise program, you know, could I incorporate something that could help school owners on a Thursday? You know, if you got down there a day early, could I help? Like I really, and then could we bring in some athletes? The biggest thing with our seminars is that we never been able to draw a big crowd with our seminars. Some places will have, you know, like battle and stuff like that. They'll have these big seminars, but we've never drawn a big crowd for seminars. But at some point in time, I think I'd like to have a big name come in and really help our kids, but be unique, not just a seminar. Like I'm trying to think of a different way to present that to the kids. So I've been kicking that around. So there's a lot of ideas kicking around. It just takes time to develop it because I don't want to take away the event as good as it is. I want to add to it, but I don't want to add to it to the point to where it bogs it down from what the true essence of it is an efficient, well-run, oiled machine that gets done on time. You know, the last couple of years, I tell you what, you know, even in St. Louis and then the last few years, I mean, our efficiency on running on time has been on point, and we have been running really good. Parents always complain we're there for 7 hours. Some of our parents were there for 2 hours and they were gone out eating. You know, they got their stuff done and they were gone. So, you know, there's a few changes I want to make this year, but just on some divisions that we currently have, but maybe add a couple divisions. But I'm also looking at the future on what can I do to really truly blow this thing out of the water to where I can give coaches and school owners a little piece of what, you know, to something that can help them out. And then the student athletes themselves, see if we can't drive up their athleticism, maybe like a warm up or something like I've seen that done in other places where they warm you. I don't know. I've got so much stuff in my head, but trying to get it down and get it set in concrete it is another story. So, but for this year, just some small changes, but it's pretty much business as usual this year.
That's awesome. And one of the things I don't think people think about when you start talking about adding divisions, okay, do like a low kick tile and this or that. Hey, why aren't you doing this division? Oh, what about that? Training the staff to understand all of that. Not everybody has dabbled in a lot of different things. We've done WACO, we've done, I'm a promoter for IKF. Like I've read the rule books, I've done a lot of that. Not it's very hard for them to understand it. Then gear regulations come in. Then do you have referees that can run that ring that not only are trained, but can actually be there all day? Maybe they need to compete. Like there's so many working parts. I think when people start throwing this out, and then again, you get to where there's too many events. I've done that before where my kids are like, I want to do this one, this one, this one. I'm like, shoot, we'll sign up for all of them. And then, man, I think Ben went, one of his fights, he fought like 9 times. He came up to me afterwards because he still had 2 divisions left. He was crying. He's like, Dad, I'm so tired. And I felt like a huge tool. I was like, I'm sorry, buddy. I didn't know we were going to go like this today. I was like, let's just do one more. I'll go pull you out of the last one. I get it because we've been going all day. So then you come into that too of if you give them too much, are they going to ruin their own event by being like, I'm going to do it all today? Because I watch people do that. They think if they do them all, well, then I'm going to just get more medals. They don't realize how physically taxing and emotionally taxing that is.
Absolutely. And that's what it can be too much sometimes. I know it's like, oh, well, the more divisions, the merrier. But at the same time, it can be overwhelming. Like you said, and that's the thing about open tournaments. Open is it is regulated to a certain point. You have circuits and stuff like that. But if I draw a brand new school that, like you said, doesn't have the gear, if we make it too restricted, we can't ask the school owner to go out and go buy, well, if you're going to come to this tournament, you got to go out and buy all this brand new gear. Well, you know what? We just won't come. And that's
exactly.
So trying to be minimal on what we require, but at the same time emulate what other people are doing. That's what I've tried to do with the rules. And I've had a little bit of flexibility with that, but yeah, it can be too much. And I don't want it to be overwhelming, but at the same time, if it needs to be tweaked a little bit, we can tweak a little bit. We've got that flexibility to do that. And I take the feedback. And if we change it this year, I think hopefully people have gotten to know me so far. If they come to me and go, Richard, you know what? That didn't work this year. We'll fix it. You come back next year, it won't be the same. So, hopefully people have gotten comfortable being able to tell me and give me feedback. And that way we can make it, and people know that I will change my event if it's for the benefit of everybody, not myself.
Well, and I think everybody knows that too. If you do throw something at the wall and it doesn't stick, or if you throw something at the wall and that kind of messed up other divisions, or it was obvious that, okay, yeah, these 2 schools really liked this event, but everybody else in the tournament could have cared less. Maybe it's not a winner. Maybe it's not for you. People forget that too. If you have 25 divisions, well, then you need a lot of people to come to that tournament. So then you're not just lining up 2 people at a time, or because then you get one person signed up for something and then they're mad they don't have anyone to compete against. It's like, well, that's because everybody else did this event. Like the people dictate that too. I think people need to keep that in mind. But I know that we love the event. We're super excited for them this year. You bringing us into this, I'm glad you didn't give up on me, kept DMing me. Hey man, what about this event? At one point I remember looking at my phone. I'm like, golly, this guy doesn't give up. So finally I came down to that one event and I was like, oh, this is great. And I tell that to students all the time. I'm like, it's just, I left that tournament because I drove down and drove back the same day with the students. I drove down in my Fox body and then came back. And, I remember getting home that night going, this was cool. These guys, it was different than I'd ever done before. I thought everybody had to have a polo and Dockers on and all this other stuff. And we left, everybody had so much fun and they enjoyed it. And the refs made sure everybody had a good time. And that was our first Heartland. And we did our first OMN that year. And it's just been a game changer. So I appreciate everything you've done for us. I appreciate everything you've been doing for the sport and for the martial art. And I wish more people would open their mind and give things a try, and check it out. But at the end of the day, everybody's got to find what's for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we've tried to bring in, other styles and stuff like that, or as far as people, even like the Olympic, we talk a lot about the Olympic TKD, that kind of crossover and integration into the open side. It is tough. And people have got their own wheelhouse for what they want to do, and that's fine. My goal is to find those ones that haven't found their place yet, or they're looking for somewhere else to go. And hopefully we can fill that. And the recruiting in the DM, like you talked about, like I do that all year long. I'm messaging people. I'm trying to recruit athletes. I'm trying to find schools that, that have new athletes to give. I tease Gage about it, but Gage met his wife at one of my tournaments. So Gage's wife was one of my students when I had my TKD program. So, and now they have kids together and they're taking class. So there's just so much that can foster out of a tournament and an event. There's friendships, and these kids with social media, these kids can talk across the states to one another. They can Snapchat, Instagram. There's just so many benefits to a tournament. And I think having new faces there, and as we recruit, that just really adds to the element, because they're like, oh, who is that? Oh, who is that? And it's just, I think it really makes it a better experience. So we're always constantly recruiting, and I know people, I do try not to wear people out, but you got to tell people what's going on.
You
I think
do, you
communication
do.
is key.
You do. So how can people find out about the event, find out about you, like get connected, say they're a new school that sees this, or we post them everywhere, be on Spotify, YouTube, all those places. How can they find you? So I make sure to put all that in here for you.
The two quickest ways: one, I have no problem giving out my personal cell phone number because it's on every single flyer that I give out. But if you want to call me directly, let's just have a conversation. That's the first place. I think sometimes emails are great, text messages are good, but I think having a conversation and really talking through like what you're looking for in a tournament. So if you call me at 417-496-5038, that's my cell phone number. Social media platforms, Instagram and Facebook. You look up Ozark Mountain Nationals, you're going to find a link to get to me. And then lastly, my email, omnkarate@gmail.com. Those avenues, I spend a lot of time on social media. I respond pretty quickly. Cell phone, if you call me, I'll call you back. I'm in the healthcare industry during the day, so sometimes a little bit spotty during the day, but typically I can respond back to you. For social media, email, and then my personal cell phone number, just give me a call. I love to talk shop as far as martial arts goes in the sports side. And there's anything I can do to help you out with tournaments in general. I don't even care if you come to OMN. If you just want to learn about tournaments, call me. I'll answer those questions too. And I'll get you in the right direction. If you ain't from my state, I'll figure out tournaments in your area that I can recommend, and I'll get you going in the right direction. It really doesn't matter where you're at. I can find you an event.
That's awesome. Well, hey, thank you for coming on today. We'll end at that. And it was a pleasure as always. I look forward to seeing you soon.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Appreciate it.